and we will transition smoothly. Ronald provided the, let's say, different perspectives to this topic and theoretical underpinning. And now we are moving to more practical side. And we have with us my dear friend Tomáš Šprlák. Tomáš is a service manager of newly launched public guidance services for working adults in France. He was previously a manager of public employment services in Slovakia. And he's also chairman of the Slovak Association for Career Guidance and Career Development, and also chairman or president of the European Federation of Centers of Career Guidance and Bilan de Compétences. Hi, Tomáš, can we hear you?
Hello, I can hear you well. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we just put on your presentation, and I already introduced you, but you can add some information. And also, can you please present both services, because you have this unique experience of managing public guidance services both in Slovakia and France. So can you please provide some kind of description and also comparison of the two?
Thank you, Ladislav. So yes, this presentation will be down to earth compared to the amazing overview and scope of the presentation of Ronald, and I hope to bring you some perspectives from the point of view of the service management, and the goal is to think together about how we can reconcile the ambition of guidance, which is a tool mainly to enhance or to promote emancipation and empowerment of people, and as such should be fundamentally tailored to the needs of the clients. How to reconcile this with the requirements of predictable management and funding, and avoid as much as possible the pitfalls that Ronald presented. So in a way, it is a question of how to put a sort of rigid frame on such a flexible thing as a guidance. So the two services I wanted to provide, and we can show the next slide, is the French service Mon Conseil en Évolution Professionnelle, which translates as counseling for professional development. Can we move to the next slide? Ladislav?
Okay, yeah, yes. Sure, I can hear you now.
Perfect.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So it's a French...
Is this a good slide?
Yes.
And also, Tomáš, we have a poll we can launch. So again, please, before we start, to give you some kind of reference point for your presentation, go to Slido. And there is a poll active right now. To what extent are clients involved in service design at your organization? Even if you're not career guidance practitioner or counselor, I think the clients, we all work with clients, so you can relate to this question. So please try to respond to this question, and we will come back to it. So Tomáš, you can talk us through this polling, and we will get back to the results. So please pick it up from here.
Okay, thank you. So the third service is, so as I said, the counseling for professional development. This is a French service. So traditionally, career guidance were separately provided by different networks, public employment services, youth agencies. And in 2014, there was an effort from the state to bring first more coordination among these services, and two, bring more coherence to these existing services from the perspective of the clients in order to promote access. So a government decree created this new service that is still provided across 5 operators. And the regions, French regions, are responsible for the development and coordinations. So what is interesting that while 4 of these networks are publicly funded, I work for a private operator that is contracted by the state to provide the Conseil en Évolution Professionnelle to working adults. So we are the only operator that is not directly subsidized by the state, such as the PES, but we are paid per client and level of service. We will discuss this further. So in order for you to imagine what it looks like, so I work in a region of around 5 million inhabitants, and we have some 80 counselors in 50 offices. So the accessibility is really important, geographical, but also in terms of opening hours. So we provide services mostly in the evening and also on Saturday. And we can go to the next slide. So these are some principles and objectives of the service, but the main goal is to make it easier for the clients to access the service. So these different networks provide service under the same name. We have a common call center that orients clients to the appropriate operator. The terms like co-construction appear directly in the state decrees, in the methodological materials, and are embedded in the course of the service. Another important methodological principle is this capability approach derived from the thinking of Amartya Sen. So this service is there to help people convert available resources and formal rights, such as individual training accounts and other different existing funding mechanisms, to effective rights, real liberties, so that everyone can use them in their real situation. This is the objectives. Then the second service, and we can go to the next slide, is the bilan de compétences or skills audit. So the skills audit is a traditionally French or Francophone methodology developed in the 80s, but I will not talk about bilan de compétences, but about the specific context, case study of service provision, bilan de compétences, in the context of contracting by Slovak PES, public employment services, of private providers. This project started in 2018, 2019, and it's specifically targeted to long-term unemployed. So next slide. What are the main principles of this service? So it's quite different from the French service, Mon conseil en évolution professionnelle. So the goals, as you can see, are defined in a much narrower way, but still quite progressive, because there is no obligation of placement, and the goal is the development of career management skills. In terms of the methodologically, this is a more traditional guidance program with a well-defined course. There is no testing or psychological assessment, but still there is some residual matching thinking behind the service. And as usually within the public employment services context, participation is mandatory. So the main principle is not the initiative of the client.
Okay, Tomáš, thank you for this quick presentation of both services, and we can now move to the question: how do these two services address clients' needs?
So, so if we start with the Slovak case, the bilan de compétences or skills audit, so we can illustrate this on the next slide by showing the course of the action. So it's quite long, 38 hours, takes 8 to 2 weeks. As you can see, the course is very traditional and linear. Focus is clearly on group workshops. However, there are also 4 individual interviews that allow for some personalization of the program. Now, how exactly the funding body tries to work with the individual voice of the client, sort of, and we can illustrate it on the next slide. So at the time, we developed, you can click once again to show the document. We developed within the PES a sort of CMS online checkup or checklist that is based on the review of literature and on consultation with counselors and employers. You can't see the text, but it's a list of very objective and observable indicators, such as the person is able to describe his or her professional interests, is able to describe his or her values, has a profile on a job-seeking website, is able to write a CV and manage a work interview, knows the employers he or she can contact, but also some more general things about motivation and yeah. So this how is this used? This is used in the first interview, individual interview between the counselor and the client. and they try to co-evaluate the current situation of the client. So it's not an assessment by the counselor, but they try to engage the client as much as possible in this self-assessment. So what are the factors that are present at the beginning of the programs? And this helps both the counselor and the client to define together the personalized focus or goals of this of the consequent guidance program. Now, in France, when we talk about the French service, Counseling for Professional Development, and we can advance one slide further. And show the whole slide. So the service is, as you can see, the structure is modular and divided into 3 levels. This is level 0, 1, and 2, with different duration and objectives. There are 3 key things to observe or to remember. So the level 0, the referral is provided by a call center that is common to all the operators. And the working adults can arrange directly a meeting with the counselor. It's a free number that we try to communicate. If it's not a working adult, he is oriented to another operator. Second important thing is that there is a deliverable after completing level 1 and level 2. So this is a short report that is co-written between the counselor and the client. And the third point is that the decision to continue to the next level of the service is always on the initiative of the client. So compared to Bilan de Compétences, the service is shorter, but longer in terms of month that the person can be accompanied. And this service also plays what in France they call the role of ensemblier. So putting together all and helping the clients to access all the different services. For example, if a client needs a more intense guidance, he is informed about the possibility to use a bilan de compétences. Or if he or she wants to create an enterprise, start a new business, he is referred to appropriate service that can help him. Now, next slide, please. In terms of the voice of the client, and the personalization, the flagship method or term of this service is called shared analysis of the situation. So this is the name of the first level of the service. So this is usually one meeting that takes approximately 2 hours. And here the objective really is to allow the clients to express his or her needs, get better understanding of the situation, identify goals, levers of action, and decide to engage in the service or not. And here is where the real challenge in terms of training of the counselors lies. So we try to create a community of practice and work on how to really focus on the relation building in this phase and refrain from passing directly to the solution mode, despite the fact that the client often comes with a specific explicit request and demand that, however, often hides an implicit need. And the role of the counselor here is to help him find it, problematize it, conscientize it. And this is also important for the use of the service. Today, 80% of people who come to see us decide not to continue to level 2. So this is a risk of the service to become just a sort of information point and not a real counseling service. So in terms of methodology, here is where constructivist methods are usually used, such as mind mapping and etc.
Tomáš, and both services look quite complex actually. And can you please explain how are these 2 services operated at service management level?
Yes, and we can show some things in the next slide. So the management of the bilan de compétences service is rather traditional, where the PES is the funding body, and they pay the providers per hour based on the presence sheet. So there is no pay per result, so there is no obligation of placement, but the labor office evaluates the results based on the results of the CMS checklist that we talked about. Now, the management of the counseling for professional development is more complex. So we are paid for deliverables after every phase. And 15% of these are checked by the funder, and they are checked for quality. So the funding body, which is the French Ministry of Labor, checks how well the shared analysis of the situation is reflected in the text. And beside this, the operator receives other fixed rate quarterly payments for service promotion, for partnership building, and for the promotion of the service. And as you can see in the performance indicators, so if we really try to simplify, the main difference could be the focus. In the case of Bilan de Compétences, it's focus on outcomes, although no paper result. And in terms of counseling for professional development, the focus is more on outputs. So how many people use the service? How many people access other complementary services thanks to the consultation with the counselors? How long does the service take in average per one client, etc.? So really we are in this logic of promoting the use of the service rather than some specific predefined outcome.
Okay, thank you, Tomáš. And can you please sum it up for us? Some main takeaways from your presentation.
So these are, I would formulate this perhaps differently if I had seen Ronald's presentation before, but these were the main thoughts before this webinar. So in terms of access, if possible, make it on demand by the client, but then the challenge is really to invest in the promotion of the service and to work on the access. Really, the service needs to be with a low level of access. In terms of goals, I think it's important that the goals are formulated as widely as possible to make place for all the various career-related needs of the client. And the main goal or ambition should always be empowerment and development of the autonomy of the client. And this is perhaps better than the goal of developing a narrowly defined set of outcomes such as career management skills. This leaves you more space for action. In terms of methodology, I think what really helps is if the analysis of needs is embedded explicitly in decrees, in policy documents, in methodology, and is an obligatory phase, structure obligatory phase in the service. But this is quite self-evident. In terms of design, I think the modular approach is interested, can react better to clients' needs, and the client can decide how deep or how long the guidance should be, how much of a service he or she needs. In funding, as I said, it's interesting to pay per deliverable, not per duration. This gives providers some margin of flexibility, and also providers, if we are in public-private partnership, should be motivated to develop the quality of the service. So there should be payments for continuous professional development of professionals, for promotion, payments based on user satisfaction, based on how well you manage to promote the service and integrate it to the existing infrastructure in the region. So in terms of evaluation, and this is also just my hypothesis or feeling, paper output seems to allow for more openness to clients' needs than paper outcome. So if there is obviously if there is a pressure on the provider in terms of placement or employability outcomes, this can be contradictory to what client really needs, because he or she might not primarily need to develop some specific career management skills or find a job. The question or the problem might be much different from this. And if you don't focus on outputs, then also the counselor has more liberty to work on what is important for the client.
Okay, thank you, Tomáš. And we actually still have a poll running, so I would like to maybe go back to the results of the poll. And we asked, to what extent are clients involved in service design at your organization? And we see that vast majority, more than 95%, opted for either not enough or just enough. So I think this gives a clear picture of where we're coming from. And also I would like to ask you, and addressing this, how can a career counselor at the individual level can be the agent of change, or how can he change that? Or because it often comes to the management level, how the service how the service looks. So how can counselor at individual level be this agent of this transformation, this change?
To give more place to the voice of the client.
And how it can be done?
I mean, yes, I think that the fact how the service is conceived plays a very important role. So if you work as a career counselor within public employment services, and there is often a system of assessment of your work that is in place. You have pressure from your managers, and then it's an art of how you can reconcile these service requirements with the real needs of the client. But I don't think there's a recipe for this. And I think the main pitfall is this: to structure a service in such a way that its evaluation depends exclusively on some very narrowly defined outcomes. And if this is the case, then you as a counselor, apart from tricking the system, you have not much more choice. Of course, you can personalize the content of your exchanges with the beneficiary, but in the end, the system will always catch up with you. So I think this is yes.
We are actually getting some questions from our audience, which I would like to ask which I would like to be asked. So the first question is, if you could highlight one European country that offers good quality client-oriented services, what country would it be? I think that's quite obvious, but you can elaborate on that.
I don't know many guidance systems in many European countries. From what I know there was a very highly participative process of creation of a guidance system in Norway in recent years, but I have not seen the results. I think that the new French system of counseling for professional development, or Conseil en évolution professionnelle, is quite an interesting compromise between the requirements of a manageable and widely available national system, and that also allows for some sort of flexibility. I think what is certainly inspiring in France is this will of the legislator, of the public management, to put in place a service that takes into account the recent tendencies in career guidance, such as promoting access, in taking inspiration from the capabilities approach, putting focus on constructivist approaches. So in this way, I think the French system is quite inspiring. The pitfall or the risk of the French system is the complexity of the guidance, lifelong guidance and lifelong learning system. There are so many existing things that are in place, such as individual training accounts, funding mechanisms for lifelong learning, validation, that a person easily gets lost in using them, and the state or the system in this way sort of puts the citizen in the role of an incapable person, because the conditions of accessing to all these services are so different and sometimes so complex that without the need of a counselor, you simply cannot use them. So this is a risk for counselors to become an information points or even gatekeepers without whom you cannot access all these different services. So I think this is the negative points about the French system.
Okay, so I just have a quick follow-up on that, and then you will be free to do your other work, because you are a very busy man, as I was told. So you mentioned the French system, and you mentioned how it works. Do you actually see in Europe like convergence towards some ideal, or are we all heading same direction to client-centered services and lifelong provision of career guidance? Do you see some convergence?
Thank you very much for this question, and I should have made my presentation longer so that we would have less time for this kind of dangerous questions. I don't know. I think that
no worries. You can actually reflect on it, and because we have one other questions, and we can go back to this question after. How do you see future of BDC in France? Are you thinking about involving some kind of chatbots into your care guidance services?
This is okay. These are two different types of services. If we talk about counseling for professional development and bilan de compétences in France. In France, also bilan de compétences, it's a beautiful service. It's up to 24 hours, often 24 individual consulting hours with an experimented career counselors that allows you to go very deeply into the analysis of your motivations, strengths, skills, and competencies. You elaborate a beautiful portfolio of competencies, and as a result, you have a beautiful career project that you worked on for 3 months with your individual counselor. So it's a very luxurious service and very expensive service that was provided yearly in France. I have data from 2016 and 2017 to around 50,000 people in France, which for a country of I think 70 million inhabitants is not too much. So I think the will of the public authorities was to create a service that is seemingly shorter, less generous, but that is available to all citizens, or to as many citizens as possible. In terms of cost, if you compare bilan de compétences and counseling for professional development, there is a huge difference of service in terms of price. I think the counseling of professional development is around 5 to 10 times cheaper than bilan de compétences, and this is why it can be provided to more people. Another key difference would be that bilan de compétences in France is focused solely on the elaboration of the career project, and the person is sometimes left on her own after the bilan de compétences to realize the project, where the counseling for professional development, inspired by this capability approach, its role is to really help the client to go until to help the clients until the end. So if there is a career project, to help him or her find an appropriate training, find the funding for it, and help him or her after the training to find a new job and to realize actually its career project. And this is why for some people that are maybe lower skilled or less autonomous in the management of their careers, it can be career counselor who can intervene on behalf of the client and contact and mobilize different actors on the territory to really not leave anyone behind and help everyone to fully realize his or her career project.
Thank you,
So
Tomáš.
I think clearly that the future is this new service, but there is a place for a more individualized and more profound service, such as Bilan de Compétences, for people who need more time and more attention to elaborate a realistic orientation.
Thank you, Tomáš. Thank you for sharing these insights with us, and also for joining us despite your very busy and tight schedule. And yeah, thank you very much. You can stay with us for the rest of the seminar.
Thank you.
So now we had Ronald Sultana. He provided theoretical